Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you how to mix bongos in just 3 simple steps. We are talking bongos today, but before we dive in, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process step by step to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and talk about 3 steps to mixing bongos. Before we get into the steps here, let me play you what the bongos are sounding like in the mix here. So I'm going to solo up the bongos, you can hear what they sound like, and then I'm going to take off all the processing we have here, and you can hear what we started with on these bongos. We'll start with all the processing in though. You can hear our finished product. And again, I will take it off here in a moment. So here's our finished bongo sound. Clearly, one of those has a lot more power to it, a lot more tone to it, and a lot more atmosphere and a lot more room sound to it. So obviously it's the after the processing that has all that positive stuff to it, right? Before, it's a good bongo recording. We're just using these 3 steps here to enhance that sound and take it a step further to sit it inside this mix without having to do any extra steps there. So we're going to get some room sound from it without having to add any artificial room sound like reverb or emulations or IRs or anything like that. We're going to get all of the sound right from the single mono bongo mic right here, okay? So step number 1 that we're going to go over is first getting rid of what you don't want with your EQ. So we have 3 moves here on our EQ that we're going to talk about. The first one we're going to go over here is the high pass filter. So I will start without the high pass filter and then I'll kick it in. Pay attention to how our bongo sound changes here. It's subtle, but it tightens up our low end a little bit so we don't have anything that's ringing down here in the 100 hertz area. You can see the fundamental for both of our bongos. It's 2 bongos, a higher one and a lower one. Both of the fundamentals are right here around the 200 hertz area. So we don't need any of this stuff down here. And we've got a little bit of information that lingers around the 100 hertz area that we don't need to build up or get exaggerated when we put on our compression or when we boost later. So that's our first cut. We're getting rid of all that low end that we don't need, any information down there that will build up or exaggerate later. Our second one is that we're going to get rid of the mud that sits right above our fundamental. Our fundamentals are pretty close to each other. The bongos are tuned pretty close to each other. The high and the low one, they're both sitting right here around the 200 hertz area. But right above that is where we're going to have the mud or the mid-range buildup from both of the bongos, because obviously they're not really tight sounding. They're bongos, so they have a little bit of ring to them, and they ring a little bit in the room as well. And we don't want that to build up in our mid-range and kind of take over our bongo sound. That's what this move is here. We're cutting about 10 dB at 455 hertz. But you can see we've tightened up our Q a little bit because we don't want to reduce too much of the fundamental, and we don't want to air too much up into the high mid area because we're going to take care of that next. So take a listen without this cut in, and then I'll kick it in. I'll boost up this frequency range here. You can hear what we're taking care of. When I boost it up, you can hear the ringing that I'm talking about. That's just the buildup that you're going to get from him hitting these two bongos right in a row like that. So any ring or length that they have to them is going to combine and build up, and you're going to hear that in the microphone right here in the mid-range as well. We're keeping a tight cue, again, so we don't reach too much down into our fundamentals here, but you can hear when we kick this cut in here, we get a little bit more focus down there at our fundamentals, and it makes some room up in the top end for that to shine as well. Our next cut here is up in the higher mid area, so we're reaching towards our 1K area right here. We're doing a 5 dB cut at 900 hertz here, and this is a normal cue here, so we're at a cue of 1 here. Normal type of bandwidth here. You can see we're reaching up towards about 2K here, so we're reducing a big chunk of the mid-range and reaching into the high mids here. This is where things can get kind of nosy sounding on anything like toms or bongos or congas like this. These type of instruments that are usually a little bit longer and have some more tone to them, any kind of ring that you get from them or tone that you do get from hitting them can kind of build up in this mid-range area and get kind of nosy sounding. And you'll hear that when I kick this in, you'll hear that kind of nosiness disappear. Our bongos get a little bit more clear sounding. And again, I will boost up this area so you can hear the frequencies that we are taking care of. Removing that kind of nosiness there in the 900 hertz area. And you can see it's two frequencies that are jumping up and down. It's an octave or a couple octaves up from our fundamental. We don't need that. We want to hear our fundamental, and we want to leave room for what we're going to boost here in the top end. That is step number 1. Going in, figuring out what you don't need, figuring out what's taking up space that you don't need inside your bongo sound. So we got 3 cuts here: high pass filter, getting rid of that low mid mud, and then taking care of that nosiness in the mid-range. Step number 2 is compression. Now I'm using a little bit more compression than you probably need in some mixes, but I'm using the compressor to get some more room sound as well as attack out of these bongos here. Take a listen beforehand, and then I'm going to kick the compressor in and pay attention to how we get some more room sound as well as attack out of the bongos here. We're not just using our compressor here to even out the volume of our bongos. We get a little bit of that from our compressor, but you can see they're played pretty evenly. All of our hits are pretty much right in the same volume range there, so there's not a lot of evening we need to do with the compressor. We're mainly using it to enhance the tone of the bongos here. We're getting a little bit more attack out of it, and we're bringing up the room sound that we get from them being mic'd in a live room here. Our attack's at 25 milliseconds here, so a little bit on the medium or slower side. That way we leave room for the initial transient to pop through. That's how we emphasize that attack, by making room for the initial transient of the signal to pop through before we do the compression here. And then our release is set in time, so the compressor lets go before the next bongo hit. We don't want to be holding on while the next bongo hit is happening. Otherwise, we're going to ruin any attack that we do have. We're at a 3-to-1 ratio, so we're not going too aggressive with the ratio, but you can see we really are layering on the compression. That's how we bring up the room sound. By compressing the bongos a little bit more aggressively, it allows us to bring up the room sound as we pull up our makeup gain here. So one more time here, I'll leave the compressor up. Pay attention to how much reduction we're doing, and you'll be able to see here how our compressor moves in time with our bongos. That's step number 2. Step number 2 is using our compressor to enhance the tone, get a little bit more attack, and some more room sound from our bongos there. Step number 3 is boosting or enhancing frequencies. So we're going to go back to our first EQ. First, we're going to pull up some top end. First boost we're doing here is we got a 17.5 or almost 18 dB boost at 7K. We were lacking some top end here on the bongos, that nice air and that nice top end click or attack that you want to hear from the hands hitting the bongos here. So that nice top end slap that you want to hear. That's what we're going to get from this boost here. First listen without, and then I will kick this boost in here. So we're doing 17.76 dB at 7K here. And listen to what we get from this exaggerated boost up on the top end here. That nice hand slap onto the bongo really comes out with this boost up top. It gives the drums, the bongos, so much more air up on the top end, and it works in conjunction with our compressor to give that nice attack on the top end. We're getting that attack or exaggerating it with the compressor, and then we can use our EQ here to bring it out even more by enhancing the top end. Next boost we have here is a little bit lower. This is just giving us a little bit more crack from the bongos. We're at almost 3K, 2.84K, and we're doing about a 5 dB boost here. Take a listen to what this adds for our bongos here. Brings in a lower octave on the top end, which helps to fill out the bongo sound overall. With just this really big boost up on the top, things started to feel a little bit scooped in the mid-range, and I wanted to bring out a little bit of this 3K area to get that crack and make the bongos feel full. Not like I just cut a whole bunch of mid-range to get that top end and low end. I want some of that high-mid area in there to help them cut through the mix. This 3K area is what helps any kind of drums like toms or bongos or congas cut through a mix there, just adding this little bit of 3K crack there. Last piece here for our step 3, which is boosting frequencies here, is getting our low end intact with these bongos here. You could see our fundamentals were around the 200 hertz area, right? And we did our nice big high pass filter here up to 137 hertz. So we're wiping off our lower octave that we don't need down there. Now we can boost a little bit lower than our fundamental to bring up our fundamental without bringing up any of that low mid area that we cut earlier, and also bringing up some of that lower octave that we already controlled. So we can control the low end in our step 1 by getting rid of what we don't need, and then we can use our boost here to bring up our fundamental and some of that lower octave underneath it to get a full low end sound. I've dropped in another high pass filter here just so this boost doesn't reach so far down into the sub area. We'll start without this boost in, and then I will kick it in. Listen to how our low end really comes into fruition here. It be full and powerful. Now our bongos feel balanced overall. We got our high end sitting right with our 2 previous boosts, and adding this one boost here, we're at 142 hertz. So sitting below our fundamentals there. But again, we don't want to reach too far up into the low mid area here that we already cut and took care of earlier with this boost here. But I do want to pull up some of this underneath the fundamental to give it some more lower power than just the fundamental there. 3 steps here to mixing bongos. Step 1 is getting rid of what you don't need. So we have our 3 cuts here. High pass filter, making sure we don't have any of that low stuff that we don't need on our bongo sound. Getting rid of that nasty low mid information that builds up. And then getting rid of that nosiness in the mid range or any kind of ringing that we get from the bongos in the room. Step number 2 is using our compressor to enhance the overall tone of the bongos. So we're doing about 8 dB compression. So it's a lot of compression, but that compression helps to exaggerate the room sound that we have from the microphone while also emphasizing the attack on the bongos. That's step number 2 there, is using our compressor. Step number 3 is boosting what we do like and enhancing what we have with our EQ here on our bongos. So we've got our big boost at 7K, bringing up that air and that nice hand slap, that attack we get from that on the bongos. Then we have our 3K boost here, or 2.84K boost here. That's bringing up that nice mid-range or high-mid crack. That's going to help our bongos cut through the mix. And then, last but not least here, we have a big 10 dB boost sitting just below the fundamental on our bongos. That's what gives them the power and the weight they need to feel balanced overall. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you are ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.